I'm Sierra, the astounding actress.
I'm Sarah G, the cultural connoisseur.
I'm Frankie Ashton, the portentous professor, and this is Sunkissed Pod.
The podcast that goes there.
Sunkissed Pod is the creative space where we talk about popular media, self-exploration, and the world around us.
Come sit at our table and kiki with the girls and ladies.
Hi listeners, it is Frankie, your portentous professor. I'm coming at you live in the FrankieDome, where I thought maybe I could bring a little bit of my experience. I was about to say expertise, but not so much, but experience to the pod. And we were thinking of different topics we could all do for our solo episodes. And I feel like tattoos make sense for me. For a little bit of background, my first tattoo was in 2017. I was matching with one of my best friends, where we found an image online we liked and brought it to the shop. We brought it to this artist and we said, hey, just slap this on me. And he was like, absolutely, here's a bill for $250. Bruh. for the tattoo that we got, and with my experience and knowledge now, I'm like, wow, quite interesting, a price point. But anyway, my first tattoo was in 2017. I have now got to have up to 30. They span all over my body. I think the only places where I did not get tattoos were my neck, my shoulders, I think almost my upper arms. Yeah, there's still a lot of open space, so I'll be up in here very soon. This is a lifetime marathon, not a sprint for how quickly I can get these dope sleep. Anyway, I'm off topic. What I mean to say is I wanted to start off with my history of tattoos, my experience with tattoos, and then I also want to talk about tattooing as a practice. I want to talk about what tattooing means to me and what it can mean for some of the more marginalized populations of everywhere, I suppose. So I had that first tattoo experience with my friend. We went to a shop and she watched as I was, just dug into on a table. I remember asking for a break and he was like, no, you got this. I was, shops aren't my spot. Now that that was my first experience, but that is certainly not of my sensibilities. And I was being tattooed by a cis man. Huh. I don't remember the last time I did that. Thank you very much. That was crazy. So that was my first experience. It was cold. It was embarrassing. It felt like I shouldn't talk, and I felt very small. But it started my appetite. Like I said, I have like around 30, maybe under 30 tattoos, and that sort of wet my whistle, and I was like, nah, I need more. I need that. So I started off my tattoo journey in more intimate settings after that. Dorm rooms, homes, or small studios. I've never had sanitation worries, actually. Surprisingly, I look on all of my choices and all my choices is all I'll say. And I've been like, whoa, was there a point where I was just like, this is stupid, I get what I get? I have never had a healing issue. Maybe once when I took the advice of someone who doesn't work with Black people as clients a bunch. That's what it was. And I had a crazy healing experience for that. But even in the dorm rooms, in the homes, in the living rooms, I have never had like a sanitation worry. So I've had overwhelmingly queer tattoo artists, trans tattoo artists, counterculture artists, I suppose. Not for any like specific branding reason, just that's the experience of being othered in society, your counterculture, I guess. So There is also like a history between my experience, which is with DIY tattooers, is what I'll say. Folks who did not go through an apprenticeship. What that means is folks often look for more experienced tattoo artists that already are established in shops or with their own businesses, and they ask for an apprenticeship. And it's usually, from what I've heard over and over and over again, it's usually this like abusive, hazing situation where you're putting money into someone else's craft and they're taking from you and taking your labor, and you just have to like wait a certain amount of time before they say yep, and after you've been certified, which, if it has anything to do with bloodborne pathogens and other health and safety measures, I know so many people who have not been in those experiences and just have those trainings under their belt because they know the intensity of what they're dealing with. But anyway, so that's you know, the traditional way that folks believe is the most, it is the most professional way to become a licensed tattoo artist. And we're going to get into that a little bit later, but that's not even in the history or informed by the history of tattooing in many different shapes and forms. Yes, it was a practice of like generationally handing down something, or only certain people with these characteristics and these intentions are let into the craft. Like maybe there was a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but to say you have to pay a lot of money and spend your time, your effort, your intellectual property, your creativity, you're gonna have to like sacrifice all that or give it to me for me to profit, and then you can move forward after an indeterminate amount of time. Which, you know, what? That is so backwards from what I have been introduced to as the history of tattooing and what I've researched that stuff. So I'm like, hello? Something feels off here. Maybe it has something to do with white supremacy and colonization. All a debt. Yeah. There's certainly that informing the new or the more modern understanding of a professional licensed tattooer. But I started with DIY tattooers and continue to do so. And that's even like a quote type deal, because some of these folks are, you know, in tattoo collectives and studios, established in ways that you would, you know, expect of a tattooer of a apprenticeship pedigree. But like, now it's just how people share their art, share their craft, and, you know, also honor all of the work that goes into body modification, the culture, the trainings, the knowledge, the capability. Anyway, I started in those environments, and tattooing taught me more about boundaries, about consent, about that transformative sort of pain where it's the only thing that you need to think about in the moment. So your other worries are detached from the self for a little bit. It's you and the pain sometimes. And sometimes, I mean, I don't know who else is, you know, that's a pod for another day, because I was about to be like, I don't know who else enjoys having needles put into their body over and over again. And then I'm like, so my Instagram tells me differently. My, what is it called? My feed tells me quite differently. So, but like, you know, when you are engaging in that like ritualistic sort of pain exposure, you really, you know, some people really have to focus, and I'm a focuser. I be in there. Sometimes I fall asleep and I'm like, yes, I literally, the only thing I have to think about is like being uncomfortable. And then like the rhythmic motion can put me to sleep. I literally have fallen asleep in dentist chairs often. It's like, girl, I'm scared. What is up with you? But yeah, hey, that is my tattoo experience. I find it to be spiritual. I find it to be intimate, and I also find it to be quite a blessing that I get to like adorn my body with talismans that I can carry into my later years, where maybe I've forgotten some of the sharpness and the clarity of new lessons, new relationships, continued relationships, portraits of a memory. Like, that's the stuff that is on my body and I carry with me. That's, so these tattoos have a little story, whether it's something that looks silly, because it could be silly. What if I want something silly on my body on purpose? People are so scared of people. You put that on your body forever, you are so scared of the people who don't give a darn, and that is whimsical, a sign of, control, a sign of, like, as in, like, getting the tattoo, like a sign that I was going through something, and even though it's a silly thing, I get to have this reminder that I withstood, and I withstood proudly. That's why I got this memory, or vice versa, a good thing. I don't know. So it's really woo-woo up in here. It's very different from the cultural connoisseur. This really is the portentous professor. Oh my God. But that's part one of this epic journey in the FrankieDome. My tattoos. I was actually, you know what? I was about to move on, but I forgot. Just a short peek of what is on my body, as you don't have the visual. Maybe in, like, one of the social media posts we're about to do, there will be a picture of some of my tattoos, but they're kind of, like, tucked away. I don't know why I decided that. I like it. It's like they're mine. So I have a lot of, like, sparkly and star imagery. I have, like, these gray wash, which means sort of like grayscale, a gradient type figures on my arm, explosions, stars, supernova, black hole type stuff. I have a stamp with a strawberry on it. I have a tattoo that I got of flowers and sunflowers and birds of paradise that I matched with my mother. And I have one of my first tattoos when I was getting tattooed in my best friend's living room with their machine for the first time. I have a magician in Gothic typeface on my hand, my palm, not my palm. Oh my God. Kind of cool. That would be cool though. I've been thinking about it. A palm tattoo. It's silly because it's stuff that you touch every single day. But anyway, I have it on the back of my hand because it was at a time in my life, and this is what I mean by, carrying something with you and having this, like, physical, visible proof, artistic proof too. Is this was at a time when I was in a haunting job with not only older white women bullies, but also, like, older black women bullies. Like, I didn't know, like, we policed each other so much, but professionally, I've been seeing some patterns. It's been kind of cray. But anyway, it was at a time where I literally had the words said to me that, like, I'm never going to make it in this field because I don't play nice with white people. And I was like, oh, gee, willikers, man. Okay. Thought you were there for me. So then I was like, okay, so if I'm not going to make it because I don't play nice with white people, which really is me being, like, quite clear and expecting the same clarity and honesty from others in a professional workplace, but that is not playing nice. Okay. Moving on. I had this because I was like, oh, if I am not going to get far because of this, then I'm not going to get far because of this too. And I am more than this job. I'm more of this research gig. I'm, silly motherfucker that puts magician on their hand. That's who I'm. More than that. I'm more than the job. I'm that. Period. I have a inflatable or like a balloon animal type neo-traditional Black Panther. You know those dudes, those old army dudes that have like that Black Panther on their forearm or wherever, and it's almost like a rug from an aerial view of like what a Black Panther would be. I got that, but it's got little loop-de-loops in it. I got tattoos that represent my grandmother, my pets. I have tattoos that span the whole of my upper back. I have tattoos that I've sat in multiple sessions for 5 hours at a time to finish. I have tattoos that go from my butt cheek to my ankle. I just got a lot going on. So that's a little bit more of who is talking about tattoos in this solo episode. So that's me. But what is tattooing as a practice? Folks say that tattooing may have started more than like 5,000 years ago. There's this really cool story about folks unearthing this dude on a block of ice, basically. And that dude's name was Otzi, and he was found near the Italian-Austrian border. His body's adorned with ink, and folks believe that that has something to do with like acupuncture. Tattooing was often seen as something that can help with those, malaises, whatever, how you pronounce it, sicknesses and diseases that folks did not have more contemporary science to deal with. So, there's science and, physicality, physiology in acupuncture and whatever is necessary for these folks to make this ink safe for body, all that stuff. But, this was before Tums. No, wait a minute. They weren't getting tattoos for like Tums problems. They were getting tattoos for like arthritis and like reproductive safety. Like, watch over this pregnant woman. Like, literally, you get tattooed while pregnant, and folks would never do such a thing now. But, like, it was a ritual, and it was necessary for, some kind of way to find control in desperate or unforeseen circumstances, or when the unknown is in front of you. You want to find out something, whether it's assigning symbology and that sort of thing to these rituals. That's discovery too. So tattoos were seen as a way of curing disease, protecting against spirits, showing affiliation towards certain groups and tribes. What is the best way to show loyalty and companionship? Hello, tattoo. And tattoos reflected personality traits such as bravery, courage, and social status. So right away, what we get from the known record of tattooing is that this was more than just appearance. There was reasons and a willingness to go through a lot of unknown pain and unknown healing processes in order to make this happen. What I find really interesting about some of the sources that I've combed to talk about the history of tattooing is there are instances all over the world, in every hemisphere, in every era, of someone developing some way to tattoo someone, if that makes sense. Women in Egypt were carving these needles out of wood and making this, it looks almost like a guitar pick that would be used to make these dot-like formations. I can imagine there was this similar discovery and a process of imagination to make these things as some of the cultures, Native American cultures, such as the Cree, the mummified bodies of a group of 6 Greenland Inuit women, 1475 Common Era, also revealed evidence for facial tattooing. It seems like there is a lot of ways, or there's a lot of want to find ways to communicate something about you and make it last, because you only get what you're born with. You only get what you're born with to be able to mark something about you, or to have some sort of your appearance be distinct to your personality. And folks grow and their mind expands and all this stuff through time, so why wouldn't they want to find a way to mark that? Kind of reminds me of the rings inside a tree, the rings that show the years of that being's existence. And I feel like tattooing is, defining the rings a little bit in a human. So tattoos have been here forever. But I also was drawn to tattoos as a topic, as a thing that I've pursued my whole life, is because of its connection with, like, quote, deviant, end quote, cultures. And that could be, you know, the queer community. There's a quote: "In a time when it was illegal to be out and proud in Western culture, many queer people got tattoos to convey secret messages or as an act of defiance to authority." This was in the 1950s. At the same time, lesbians were getting nautical tattoos, gay men were getting nautical star tattoos. They're in pink triangles, which was evocative of some of the branding put on homosexual, I don't know what to call it. Is prisoner even a word? Victim? Some of the homosexual victims of the Holocaust. Their uniforms would be branded with upside down pink triangle, and which, funnily enough, became a really popular sign for queer folks, especially in the 1980s. It was used by this HIV/AIDS activist group, ACT UP, to, you know, show who you are really standing with, and also kind of drawing those Holocaust connections, because the HIV/AIDS epidemic was fucking crazy in the sense that the government did not care in the same way that we saw, like, COVID be handled and continues to be handled. Like, they do not care. If the undesirables die, they die, whatever. So, you know, tattooing and queer tattooing being lasting throughout the ages, I think, is really powerful, because it is also during the 80s, 90s that the community is facing HIV/AIDS as an epidemic, as a crisis. It's still incredibly pervasive, the death it brings in so many different communities, vulnerable communities, to this day. But this was a time where dentists were turning you away if you were gay, because you might have HIV, which I guess can be through saliva. Actually, you know what? Okay, I get it, because they're like, my tools, they're gonna touch your blood and your gums can bleed, whatever. Still effed up. Which is why when freaking Princess Diana was like, how about stand up and help those affected with by HIV/AIDS, the community? Everyone was like, we gotta assassinate that hoe. They did. Oh my god. Rest in peace, die. Yeah, anyway, so that's why that was, like, big. Folks really were down to the nitty gritty, down to making doctor's appointments. You were othered. You were isolated, humiliated. So there is that really evocative feeling of community in tattooing that I think, like, stems from resistance, whatever it looks like. And it's kind of like the deviant prophecy is given to me as a queer person, as a black person, as a disabled person, all these things. If you've already labeled me a deviant, then I'm gonna be the best deviant you have ever seen, honey. That's the life and times of oppressed peoples and counterculture and subcultures and that sort of thing. So there's also this African practice of scarification, or, I should have looked up how to pronounce this. Cicatrization. I'll go with cicatrization for now, until I learn up. So that involves cutting the skin deeply to create scar tissue before rubbing ash or soot into the wound in order to get it to heal a certain way. You might even reopen it again to reapply more ash. That was the look that was wanted. So a little bit different than scarification, which looks like scarring your skin in patterns that denote where you come from, who you affiliate with, what your role is in the family. Yeah. And I think I bring that up in particular because my dad's family, I am Ghanaian, and I always am looking for ways to connect in the sense that I can't through my father. He's like a boner. Maybe that he's a boner. So how about I'll just say that. And yeah, so I don't have that connection literally by family reference, family experience. So I try to seek that in different ways. And, you know, I learned about a lot of African cultures and their connection with tattoos after I started some of my journey, and was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to fall into the middle of this Venn diagram of things about me and things about my culture, I guess. So there's a lot of history inside tattooing as a practice. And I kind of want to get back to my conversation about shop sensibilities, folks who do apprenticeships, traditional tattoo artists. Well, more often than not, it's tattoo artists that do traditional, if you know what I'm saying. We have this long history of tattooing representing talismans to fend off illness or to affect a disease you already have. Tattoos as resistance, tattoos as community and family. When did it start being so inaccessible? When did it start that you were expected to buy all of your equipment and then give it to someone at an apprenticeship for them to hold on to until they deemed you ready? So more often than not come from abusive situations. So what are they going to do? Cycle of abuse it and then say, oh, all of my soul was taken by my person I did an apprenticeship under. So I feel like that's just the hoops that you have to go through in order to have access to this cool underground, like it's special to these people, deviants, but not, like it used to be, as in illegal back in the day. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of layers, and I think there is a thread in this history of tattooing of white supremacy and colonization that turns something into a community practice and flip it into something to gatekeep, something that only a few select people who have decided what the merit is that it should be. These select people, can't escape that only these few select people who are exclusive should have this knowledge and to have this access. When did abusive apprenticeships focused on withstanding suffering begin? Every conversation I've had with someone who has experienced an apprenticeship, it is also a conversation of boundaries crossed. It's also a conversation of exploitation, entitlement. There's some places where totally kosher and, there's just the ritual of apprenticeship and all this stuff, and you get your stripes and you move on. But even then, when I speak to folks or have been tattooed by folks in those areas, it's still like, why are you tattooing down to the bone? I have learned through DIY experience that tattoos and tattoo processes that respect your limits, that take into account the fact that people all have differing epidermis depths and layering depths, all that stuff, skin layer stuff. I've learned that, being prepared for your tattoo appointment with a meal and hydration days before and, getting away from things that thin your blood anyway, there's just so much I've learned from DIY tattooing that tells me that you can get the same product, like a beautiful tattoo that you are proud of and you want on your body, without the stipulation that you are uncomfortable in a silent room, except for buzzing, in a uncomfortable position, getting a tattoo done by someone who's trying to go as fast as possible, ripping through your skin in order to continue taking clients, rather than folks who acknowledge the depth of your skin, who can maneuver your body in ways that's comfortable and ergonomic for themselves and also for you, rather than just you being the canvas. I think I've been vague with some of my understandings of shop versus DIY, but I hope even those vague smatterings, you can see the difference in culture. Is it domination? And when you hold all the knowledge, being the knowledge bearer, being the knowledge haver, versus, shared understanding, community, collectivist sort of expectations, almost like a harm reduction standpoint of things rather than the opposite of like, hey, you gotta feel pain to earn your stripes. I don't know. That leads me to the word scratchers. So I say I come from a DIY community, a DIY tattooer gig. I'd also say I come from the scratchers. That's what shop dudes would call folks who don't have that same training and that same apprenticeship, that same go do work for free and have it take up your time so you can't have a job that, you know, meets your needs. And it's like emotional freaking jigsaw up in there, emotional saw trap. So, you know, for people who avoid that and go on a different path, they're called scratchers. And I actually found this like awesome article. It is called Scratcher Tattoos, Why You Should Always Avoid Them. And this is from Authority Tattoo, which is a very known, like, let's just say, cis dudes, shop vibe, partnered with Amazon, that type of deal. It starts off, scratchers are inexperienced and unclean artists that have taught themselves how to tattoo rather than being trained through an apprenticeship with a professional tattoo artist. They get their name from the typical quality of the tattoos they produce, which have uneven line work that looks like a chicken scratch. For this reason, it's best to never get a tattoo from a scratcher. No matter how cheap, scratcher tattoos are never going to be the kind of art you're happy to have on your body for years to come. Most who get scratcher tattoos end up regretting it. It just makes me laugh because it really is just like gatekeeping, fear-mongering language that dehumanizes people based on how much money they can put into the start of their career in some industry. Like, truly. At least that's what I think. But hey, it's just me, Frankie. I want to give you some red flags. Your tattoo artist is a scratcher. Scratchers don't work in a shop. They don't follow safe practices. They'll give you a tattoo for, quote, real cheap, end quote, and scratchers tattoo on the side. So they have other jobs. Like, what, guys? You sound like you're literally is giving Third Reich. Like, Jesus. Poor people, bad. People who have other experiences outside of this traditional schooling are seriously relegated to a different word. Not even people who scratch. Scratchers. It's hard ER. Like, oh my God. All right, so that's just a soft example of what people more often than not think of the spots I frequent, I'll say, the communities I've built, that I've been accepted and loved in those communities. And that leads me to, like, my wrap up of tattoos, and that is, I truly think that tattoos, body modification in general, is a way for folks to reclaim their bodies. I mean, I think of so many tattoos that have these specific meanings. Like, for example, if you see a Gorgon, if you see a Medusa on, out and about, that is really well known as a signal of surviving assault. And, there's even down to the comma, not the comma, the semicolon that folks get to indicate, I'm there for folks who are contemplating suicide. Your life is not, it should not be a period. If you need to chill, if you need to stop at this semicolon, then, let it be. And that's also a signal for folks who have experienced suicidal ideation and vice versa, within and beyond that whole scenario that I put forth. But yeah, tattooing and body modification, more specifically tattooing in this case, is some, for me, reclamation over the deviant body. The deviant body is anyone outside of heterosexual, cis, patriarchal ideas, the $3 words, and anyone who is side of the ruling class, is deviant in some ways. So there's the reclamation of that. And I love the concept of placing these talismans with specific meanings on your body forever. That's something. There are so many things outside of ourselves we can't control, and often we got to find some sort of peace with that. And I think the ritual and the practice of tattooing feels like a response and an opportunity to not worry about anything else except the pain. This reasonable and manageable pain that you have consented to, that you have prepared for, that you know when is happening. So unlike those other pains and injuries in our lives that we couldn't project. They just happen. They just happen to you. They just happen around you. And it can be really hard to deal with this feeling and this lack of control. So I think I said this earlier, it's you and the pain in the room. And your artist, who you collaborated with to make this a therapeutic experience rather than a isolating and cold and scary experience. So it's you three. And I think it allows you to focus on you for once. I think as Black folks, specifically as Black women, I always say women with an asterisk. I don't think I really explained this anywhere, but I am non-binary. so it's kind of like me and the girls, or three Black women talking. It's kind of like little asterisk. Got my stuff going on, I guess. But I feel like we as people who are non-men, who are Black, we are literally trained to ignore signals in our body that tell us to stop or tell us no. And finally we have a chance to listen to those signals and accept them. Like, I don't know, like a wave. I don't know. I just, tattooing and being tattooed, it's an opportunity for me to feel outside of myself, but also deeply within. And I think it's quite a transformative process, and has deep indigenous and queer history that I think, can only make more magic within the continued sprawling history of tattooing. All right, so thanks for visiting the FrankieDome. We talked about tattoos. Maybe I should do a tattoo tour on our social media sometime. Let me know what you think. But thanks for listening. I really appreciate it. And that's me. I'm signing off.
Thank you for listening to the Sunkissed Pod.
You can find the Sunkissed Pod on Spotify and Apple.
And you can join us on Instagram at the Sunkissed Pod to stay up to date on the girls and the ladies.
Ta-ta.